I have also received a letter from the Honourable Member for Hunter proposing that a definite matter of public importance be submitted to the House for discussion, namely, the government hurting rural and regional Australia with its new petrol tax and unfair budget. I call upon those honourable members who approve of the proposed discussion to rise in their places. And I call the honourable member for Hunter.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. We just heard a personal explanation from the member for Dawson. Well, can I say to the member for Dawson, it will take more than that to save you and your electorate following the bringing down of this horrendous budget. It will take more than your opposition to that terrible PPL scheme to save you in Dawson. I say to the member for Dawson through you, Madam Speaker, I hope constituents in Dawson this afternoon are listening to this debate, because I have no doubt that at the conclusion of this debate, my colleagues and I will have convinced them or left them in no doubt that this is a bad budget for rural and regional Australia. And while there's a lot of contest, Madam Speaker, there's a lot of contest to measure which is the biggest broken promise in this budget, I suspect many of them will come to the conclusion that the increased fuel taxes in this budget will go down as the worst broken promise of all. So I hope that the constituents of the member for Dawson are listening. I hope the constituents for the member for Eden-Monaro are listening. I hope the constituents of the member for New England are listening, the members for Page, the members for Capricornia, Braddon, Lyons, the member for Parkes, all those who represent rural and regional Australia, who I know fear going back to their electorates again this weekend because of their incapacity to sell this terrible budget to their constituents. Now, it's Thursday afternoon, Madam Speaker, and I know everyone's pretty tired, and indeed they're probably tiring of budget debates. So I thought I'd keep everyone alert this afternoon by starting with a quiz. I've got a quiz for members this afternoon. I invite all members on both sides of the chamber to participate. I've got 6 questions this afternoon, Madam Speaker. The first is about people who have embarrassed themselves in politics. The second is about political parties which have embarrassed themselves in politics. And then I've got 3 questions on mathematics. Madam Speaker, 3 maths questions just to keep people alert, Madam Speaker. So the first question, Madam Speaker, is about people embarrassing themselves in politics. And so I'm going to share a quote with the chamber, and then I'm going to ask people who this quote is from. Now, I'm going to give people hints because I know it's, as I said, we're all a bit tired Thursday afternoon. I'm going to give people hints. This is a person that actually has served in this place, and in fact, it's a person that remains in this place. And the person says this are fuel taxes. Fuel tax is a tax on distance. If ever there was a country that should not aggressively tax fuel, it is a vast country like Australia. It is a tax on doing business outside the capital cities. It is a tax on farming in the distant parts of our nation. It is a tax on living and setting up a business in a country town. Now, who do members think might have said that in this place? Was it the member for Parkes? Do I hear the member for Parkes? No. No? No? Was it the member for Richmond? No, it might have been the member for Richmond. It sounds like something she might say. Was it the member for Bendigo? Could have been something she'd say, but no, Madam Speaker. That quote comes from someone on that side of the chamber. That quote comes from none less than the Deputy Prime Minister of this country. The Deputy Prime Minister of this country. Now, that's a question also about people embarrassing themselves, in this place. Now, what about political parties embarrassing themselves in this place, Madam Speaker? The question is, which party would take the prize for ultimate embarrassment in this parliament? Would it be the Liberal Party? Would it be the Liberal Party for bringing down such an embarrassing budget? Would it be the Liberal Party? Well, it's a pretty hot contest once again, but no, Madam Speaker. I think the member for Blair, I think it was, has it? It's the National Party. It's the National Party. I remind members of the play in the lead up to this budget, when we were going to lose the diesel fuel rebate. This is the straw man the coalition like to put up. We've got a plan. We've got to put petrol taxes up despite our election promises, but what are we going to do about the National Party? They won't be happy about it because they know it adversely impacts disproportionately on country Australia. I know what we'll do. We'll feign the revocation of the diesel fuel rebate, and they'll get themselves all worked up about that. And then on election night, we'll say, no, we're not revoking the diesel fuel rebate, and they'll all breathe a sigh of relief, but they won't work out until the next morning what's happened with petrol taxes. That's what went on in this place only a couple of months ago, and the National Party takes the prize for the most embarrassing moment for a party in this parliament. Now we move to mathematics, Madam Speaker, and I make this point very deliberately because it helps people understand what is happening with fuel taxes in this country, and it helps us to understand what is the difference between excising petrol now and what was compared to the days prior to the GST. So I asked members this question. If petrol was at 70 cents at the Bowser and you take 7 cents off, because John Howard, when he was Prime Minister, took, I say 7 cents, I think he took 6.7 cents off, so we'll say 7 to keep it easy. He took 7 cents off excise so that the GST wouldn't necessarily increase the price of the GST. So you take 70 cents and subtract 7 cents off the excise, and then you put 10% on, you get 10% on, and what do you get? You get roughly the same price. But what about when fuel is $1.50 a litre? When you get to $1.50 a litre and you take 7 cents off, you end up with a fuel price of about $1.57 a litre, Madam Speaker. So even John Howard understood that you can't put a tax on a tax. He didn't anticipate, of course, that oil prices would accelerate and that the 7 cent reduction would go nowhere near compensating motorists for the GST. Now, if John Howard had left the excise indexation in place, fuel excise wouldn't be 38 cents today, it would be 50. So that tells you what the now Prime Minister's decision is going to do to fuel prices in another 10 years. So this is not just a decision that impacts today. This is a compounding decision, something that's exponentially going to increase petrol prices over a period of time. Now, as the Deputy Prime Minister himself has pointed out, this is a decision that falls disproportionately adversely on rural and regional Australia because we travel longer distances. The Treasurer goes from North Sydney into the city for his meetings, just across the bridge. In rural and regional Australia, Madam Speaker, we drive hundreds of kilometres on a daily basis. Sometimes we drive 100 kilometres just to go to the supermarket. This is not something understood by those who live in our capital cities. And it's about time those members I mentioned earlier, those who purport to represent their rural and regional electorates, stood up to this mob, stood up to this government and explain how these things fall disproportionately on rural and regional Australia. Now, I'll leave others to go through the many other budget issues that adversely affect us in particular in the bush, and it goes to the GP tax and changes to universities, changes to the unemployed who themselves have to travel long distances to apply for a job, have to travel long distance to get a TAFE course or any sort of a training course, if indeed in rural and regional Australia they can get one at all, another disadvantage faced by those living in the bush. But I want to turn to one very specific break and promise before I close in the budget, because the Minister for Agriculture is with us, and I put these questions to him in the parliament last night and he refused to answer them, so I'm going to give him another chance today. I'm going to give him another chance today. When he donned the Akubra back in February and wandered out into drought-affected Australia in February, he got all the newspaper reports he was looking for. He and the Prime Minister were on the 6 o'clock news, and in the lead-up to that drought tour, the drought was in the news on a daily basis. We couldn't turn on our televisions in the morning for the Today Show or for Sunrise without them talking about drought. The Daily Telegraph in New South Wales was running a drought donation scheme. Everyone was talking about drought. But the moment the Prime Minister and the Ag Minister went out to announce their package, it all stopped. It was a beautiful political circuit breaker for them. But guess what, Madam Speaker? The drought hasn't ended for those struggling in rural and regional Australia. I was outside Emerald just last week meeting with some of these people who are very, very disappointed in this mob. on the other side. So I ask the Minister again, is the $80 million I was referring to still available to assist drought-affected farmers? You've taken $40 million out of Labor's scheme. You won't deliver $40 million under your scheme this year because you haven't delivered 1 cent to farming families. I want you, Minister, to guarantee here today that the $80 million, the $40 you took from the old scheme and the $40 you won't spend in this financial year in the current scheme will remain available to farmers in the coming financial year.
I call the Honourable the Minister.